My name is Emma. I am 32 years old, and I work in a small marketing company. About a year ago, a new employee joined our team. Her name was Lisa. I still remember the first day I met her. I was standing near the coffee machine, waiting for my coffee. I looked tired because I had stayed up late the night before. My mother was in the hospital, and I had been worried for weeks. Lisa walked over and smiled. "Long night?" she asked. I laughed softly. "Is it that obvious?" "A little," she said, "but don't worry, I look the same every Monday." We both laughed. It was a small conversation, but it felt natural. Over the next few weeks, we started talking more often. Every morning, she greeted me with a smile. "Good morning, Emma." "Morning, Lisa." Soon she remembered how I liked my coffee. "One latte, no sugar, right?" she asked one day. I looked surprised. "You remembered?" "Of course," she said. "You order the same thing every day." It was such a simple thing, but it made me feel noticed. Life had been difficult lately. My mother was still sick. Work was stressful. Some days I felt like I was carrying a heavy bag that nobody could see. But Lisa always seemed to know when something was wrong. One afternoon, she found me sitting alone during lunch. "You look upset," she said. I hesitated for a moment. Then I told her about my mother. She listened quietly. She did not check her phone. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she said, "That must be very hard." Just hearing those words made my eyes sting. After that day, we became close friends. We ate lunch together almost every day. We shared stories about work, family, and life. Sometimes she sent me messages after work. "How is your mum today? Did your meeting go well?" Those little messages always made me smile. I felt like I had someone I could trust. Someone who truly cared. One evening, as we left the office together, Lisa looked at me and said, "You know, Emma, I'm really glad we became friends." I smiled. "Me too." And I meant it. At that moment, I believed I had finally found a real friend. Someone honest. Someone kind. Someone I could tell anything. But looking back now, there was one small thing I should have paid attention to. Every time I shared something personal, other people somehow seemed to know about it later. At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was only a coincidence. After all, I trusted Lisa completely. At first, I ignored the strange feeling. I trusted Lisa, and I did not want to doubt her. Still, small things kept happening. One Monday morning, I told Lisa that I was thinking about applying for a new position in the company. "I haven't decided yet," I said. "Please keep it between us." "Of course," she replied. "I won't tell anyone." She sounded sincere. But 2 days later, a coworker stopped by my desk. "So, Emma, I heard you might move to another department." I looked up in surprise. "What? Who told you that?" He shrugged. "No idea. People are talking about it." I forced a smile, but something felt wrong. That afternoon, I sat quietly at my desk. Maybe someone guessed. Maybe it was just office gossip. I tried not to think about it. A few weeks later, something similar happened again. I told Lisa that my younger brother had lost his job. It was a difficult situation for my family, and I did not want many people to know. 3 days later, another colleague asked me, "How is your brother doing?" I almost dropped my pen. I had never told that person about my brother, not once. For a moment, I felt a chill. But when I looked at Lisa across the office, she smiled and waved at me. The feeling disappeared. "You're overthinking," I told myself. One afternoon, I walked into the break room to get some tea. 2 co-workers were standing near the window. They did not notice me. One of them laughed and said, Lisa always knows everything. The other nodded. Seriously, she hears news before anyone else. Maybe she has secret cameras, the first one joked. They both laughed. I smiled politely and walked away, but their words stayed in my mind. That evening, I began paying more attention. I noticed that Lisa asked many questions. She always wanted details. How was my family? How much was my rent? Why did I argue with my sister? What happened during my meeting? At the time, it felt like she cared. But now I started to see something different. She knew almost everything about me, yet I knew very little about her. When I asked about her family, she gave short answers. When I asked about her childhood, she quickly changed the topic. When I asked what she did on weekends, she simply said, "Nothing special." It was strange. We talked every day. We ate lunch together. We shared countless conversations. But suddenly I realized I could not describe her life very clearly. As I left the office that night, I looked at her laughing with another co-worker. She looked warm, friendly, and completely trustworthy. The same Lisa I had known for months. Yet for the first time, a question appeared in my mind. How much do I really know about her? I shook my head and pushed the thought away. Good friends trust each other. At least that was what I still wanted to believe. A few days later, I stayed late at the office. Most people had already gone home. The lights were dim and the room was quiet. I was busy finishing a report that needed to be sent the next morning. Around 8 o'clock, I finally packed my bag and left. I walked all the way to the elevator before I realized something. My phone was still on my desk. "Great," I muttered. I turned around and headed back to the office. The floor was almost empty now. Only a few lights were still on. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed that a meeting room near the corner was occupied. The door was not fully closed. I could hear voices inside. At first I paid no attention. Then I heard a familiar name. My name. I froze. "Emma!" The voice belonged to Lisa. Without thinking, I stopped walking. My heart suddenly started beating faster. I knew I should leave. I knew I should respect their privacy. But my feet would not move. I stood quietly beside the wall. Inside the room, Lisa was talking to another co-worker. Then I heard her laugh. "Emma tells me everything," she said. The other person laughed too. "Really?" "Of course," Lisa replied. "She trusts me completely." Something tightened inside my chest. I felt uncomfortable, but I still hoped there was an innocent explanation. Maybe they were discussing a project. Maybe I misunderstood. Then Lisa continued speaking. "If you know what people are worried about, you can stay ahead." The room became silent for a second. My stomach dropped. The other co-worker asked, "So that's how you always know what's going on?" Lisa laughed again. "Let's just say people share a lot when they feel comfortable." My hands felt cold. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. All those lunches, all those conversations, all those nights when I trusted her with my worries. Suddenly they looked different. Not like moments between friends, more like information she had collected. The other co-worker said, "That's actually pretty smart." "Maybe," Lisa replied. "Information is useful." Useful. That word hit me harder than anything else. Useful. Not friendship. Not trust. Not caring. Useful. I stepped back quietly before they could see me. Then I walked toward my desk and grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking. For a moment, I thought about confronting her immediately. I wanted to open that door and ask her one simple question. Was any of it real? But I couldn't. Not yet. I left the building without making a sound. Outside, the city lights looked blurry. I sat alone at a bus stop and stared at the traffic. My phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. It was from Lisa. "Did you get home safely?" I looked at the message for a long time. A few months ago, it would have made me smile. Tonight, it felt different. I did not know which Lisa was real. The caring friend who checked on me every day, or the woman in that meeting room. And deep inside, I was afraid of the answer. After that night, everything changed. I still came to work every day, but I stopped eating lunch with Lisa. I stopped sharing personal stories. When she sent me messages, I replied with short answers. "How's your mum doing?" "She's okay." "Did your meeting go well?" "Yes." Nothing more. At first, Lisa seemed confused. Then she started watching me more carefully. One afternoon, she walked over to my desk. "Emma, can we talk?" I looked up from my computer. "About what?" Her smile faded slightly. "About whatever is bothering you." I wanted to avoid the conversation, but I was tired of pretending everything was normal. "Okay," I said quietly. After work, we went to a small coffee shop near the office. The same place where we had laughed and talked so many times before. This time the atmosphere felt completely different. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, Lisa broke the silence. "Did I do something wrong?" I looked directly at her. "Last Thursday night," I said, "I heard your conversation in the meeting room." The color immediately drained from her face. She looked scared. Neither of us spoke. The noise of the coffee shop seemed far away. Then she lowered her eyes. "So you heard everything?" It was not a question. It was a fact. I nodded. Part of me expected her to deny it. Part of me expected excuses. Instead, she simply sat there in silence. After a long moment, she spoke. "When I was a child, nobody paid attention to me." I frowned. The answer surprised me. Lisa stared into a coffee cup. "My parents were always busy. My older brother was the star of the family. At school, I wasn't popular. Most people barely noticed I existed." Her voice was calm, but I could hear sadness underneath. "Then one day, I learned something." She forced a small smile. "If I knew interesting things, people listened to me." I stayed silent. She continued. "If I brought news, people wanted me around. If I knew secrets, people talked to me." For a moment, she looked much younger than her age, almost like a lonely little girl. "So I got used to collecting information," she said. "After a while, it became a habit." I remembered all her questions, all the details she remembered. Everything suddenly made sense. "But why me?" I asked softly. Lisa looked up. Her eyes were red. "Because I actually liked you." The answer caught me off guard. "I never wanted to hurt you, Emma." She swallowed hard, but I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid that if I had nothing to offer, people would leave. For the first time, I saw something I had never noticed before. Behind the confident smile, behind the friendly personality, behind the woman everyone seemed to like, there was fear. A deep fear she had been carrying for years. And suddenly, the story was no longer as simple as I thought. I had believed I found a fake friend. But now I was sitting across from a real person with real wounds. And I didn't know what to do with that truth. After that conversation, I went home with a heavy heart. I had expected anger. I had expected excuses. What I did not expect was understanding. For days, I kept thinking about what Lisa had said. Part of me was still hurt. I could not forget the words I heard outside that meeting room. Information is useful. Every time I remembered them, I felt the same pain. But another part of me kept remembering the woman sitting across from me in the coffee shop. The woman who looked scared. The woman who believed people would leave if she had nothing to offer. A week later, Lisa stopped by my desk. She did not smile this time. She simply handed me a small note. "I understand if you don't trust me anymore," it said, "but I'm sorry. Truly." At the bottom, she had written one more sentence. "I'm trying to learn how to be a friend, not a source of information." I read the note several times. Then I folded it carefully and placed it inside my notebook. Trust does not return overnight, and ours did not. For months, our friendship felt different. We still talked, we still worked together, but there was distance between us, a distance that had not existed before. Slowly, however, things began to change. Lisa stopped asking personal questions. She listened more. She shared more about herself. For the first time, I learned about her fears, her family, and her struggles. The strange thing was this: the less she tried to impress people, the more genuine she became. One afternoon, nearly 6 months later, we were having lunch together again. Not because everything was fixed, but because both of us had changed. Lisa looked at me and laughed. "You know, I used to think people only liked me because I was useful." I smiled. "And now," she thought for a moment, "now I think some people stay because they care." There was a quiet peace in her voice, a peace I had never heard before. As I walked home that evening, I realized something important. When this story began, I believed I had discovered a lie. I thought Lisa was pretending to be my friend. I thought everything between us was fake. But the truth was more complicated. Her kindness was real. Her support was real. The time we spent together was real. Even her mistakes came from something real. Fear. The fake part was not our friendship. The fake part was the mask she wore. The image of a confident woman who always had value. The image she created so nobody would see how lonely she felt inside. And maybe that is true for many people. Sometimes the biggest lies are not the ones we tell others. Sometimes they are the stories we tell ourselves. The story that we are not enough. The story that we must earn love. The story that nobody will stay if they see who we really are. I thought I had found a fake friend. Instead, I found a wounded person hiding behind a perfect smile. And in the end, that truth taught me something I will never forget. People are rarely as simple as they first appear. Sometimes what looks fake is actually a cry for connection. And sometimes understanding is harder than anger, but far more powerful.